Creature, level 29 upgrade. Today I'll be installing RPM's green hybrid gearbox. Of course, this was donated to me by Coyote0976. Thanks again, man. Now guys, I already have one of these installed on my Rustler, and I have to say I love these. This aluminum plate does help with cooling the motor down, and it's stable enough where it's not going to warp over time. Not to mention, the plastic parts are RPM, so they're not going to break easily. So let's go and open this thing up and check it out. Alright, inside of course we have the directions on how to install it. A lot of reading, but it's really not that complicated. We have the gearbox itself, green of course, and nice little features that's sealed on the bottom so you don't need electrical tape. We have the arm mounts, and they do give you 0 degrees and 3 degrees. And of course the sticker, which I get a big RPM one, the aluminum plate that goes on the gearbox. And finally, last but not least, all of the hardware in order to put together. Now you will be using some of the old screws that came on your RC, so they're not going to give you all the ones to put this together. So let's go ahead and get this thing installed. So for me, the first thing I'm going to have to do is take off this ESC mount. It's held on with 2 screws. The reason why is that I'm going to have to get in here, and that's just going to be really hard to do while this thing's attached. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I'm just going to move it to the center of the chassis and unplug the motor from the ESC. And all I have to do is pull these banana plugs apart. Alright, the next step is I'm going to go ahead and remove both of the rear tires, and that's just held on with a 4mm nut. After that, I need to take off the gear cover. It's held on with 2 screws, one on top and one on bottom. Once you remove the gearbox, you need to take the motor off the transmission, and it's held on with 2 screws, one on top, one on bottom. Now if you have a big pinion gear, you're going to have to take that off in order to pull the motor out, and that's only held on with 1 grub screw. But lucky for me, I have a small pinion gear, so I can just keep it on there. Once you pull out the motor, it's time to remove the rear bumper, and it's held on with 3 screws. There's 1 on this side and 2 on this side. Once you remove the rear bumper, it's time to take off the rear body mount. It's held in with 4 screws, 2 on this side and 2 on this side. Once you remove the rear body mount, it's time to take off the rear shock tower. It's also held in with 4 screws. There's 2 right here and 2 up here. Then the next step is removing the A-arms from the transmission. Each one's held in with a pin right here. Once you unscrew each one and pull them out, you can pull off the whole rear assembly, just like that. The last step to removing the transmission is undoing the 6 screws on the bottom. With those 6 screws out of the way, you can finally pull the transmission case from the RC. And now I need to go ahead and take off the slipper clutch assembly, including the spur gear. So I'm going to get each one of the drive shafts, bend it forward, hold it in place, and then I'm going to go ahead and unscrew this nut. Once you take off the nut, you're going to remove the collapsible spring, followed by the spur gear, the slipper clutch and slipper clutch pad, and then you'll see that there is a little metal bar in there. You're going to have to remove that and hold on to it. Believe me guys, that is a very important piece. Now I can go ahead and remove the top of the drive shafts. Each one's held in with a single grub screw. Once you take care of the top of the drive shaft, it's time to finally take this thing apart. It's held together with 6 screws. Once you get all the screws out, go ahead and flip to the bottom and pull off the electrical tape. And now you can finally pull the transmission apart. Alright, and there we go. And as you can see, it's still pretty clean in there. But still, I'm going to go ahead and use a coffee filter, wipe all the gears down, clean them up. If you don't have any coffee filters, you can go ahead and use paper towels. So just in case this is the first time you've seen the inside of a transmission, let me go ahead and point out everything that's in here. First of all, comes the diff gear. Set that off to the side. Then we have the drive gear. The drive gear has a washer on each side of it. And then finally the idle gear. The idle gear has a bearing on each side as well as a washer. And on top of that, you can go ahead and pull out the little bar that it sits on. Next, you need to go ahead and remove the bearings on this side of the transmission as well as this one. When it comes to removing the bearings, 3 of them are going to be rather easy because you can get a small socket wrench or even a Phillips head screwdriver and just push through the hole in the other side and the bearing will come right on out. However, this bearing is going to be a bit of a pain to get out. There's 2 little tricks that you can use. First of all, remember this bar? This is a bar that the idle gear sits on. You can just go ahead and put it inside of the bearing and rock it back and forth until it pops out. You can also use this end of the drive gear, but you got to be careful because you don't want to scratch up the inside of the bearing. and that usually will be enough to get it out. If that doesn't work for you, you can just go ahead and use a really small flathead screwdriver, and that usually does the trick. Once you're done cleaning out the transmission, this is what you should have: 4 Teflon washers, 6 bearings, a bar for the idle gear itself, the drive gear, and of course the diff gear. And now it's time to go ahead and install it into the new transmission. First of all, you need to go ahead and push in 4 bearings into the transmission sides. 2 on this side and 2 on this side. Once you get the bearings in, I'm going to go ahead and install all the gears onto the right side of the transmission because it's just going to be the easiest way to hold them in there. So now I'm going to get the idle bar, slide that down, followed by a Teflon washer, then a bearing, slide that down, the idle gear, push that in, followed by another bearing, and finally one more Teflon washer. Then I'm going to get the drive gear. I'm going to put a Teflon washer on this side, same thing for the other, and then I'm going to slide this into the top hole. Almost done. And the final step is, of course, just putting in the diff gear. Now before we put the transmission together, we need to put some white lithium grease onto the gears. Alright, and you're going to want to go ahead and put enough white lithium on here that it covers all the gears, and you want a good amount on there. You do not want to fill the transmission, you just want to coat the gears. Once you have a good amount, about that much, that looks good, you can get the other half of the transmission and then put it on there. Now it's time to go ahead and seal it up with some screws. So the first thing I'm going to do is attach the aluminum plate. As you can see, it just slides right on there. There's a circle right there to keep it in the right position, and then you get these screws. As you can see, they have the cone-shaped head. You're just going to go and slide one on top, one on bottom, and screw them down. After that, you're going to flip the transmission over, and now it gets a little complicated. First of all, you're going to be installing a 16mm screw that they provide into this top corner. And now it's time to start using some of your stock screws. One of the screws is shorter than the other 5. That short screw gets installed right here. Then you're going to be using 4 of these longer screws here, 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 and of course here. Now, if you have the wheelie bar mount or a rear bumper like you do with the Slash, you're not going to be using these 2 screws. So, in reality, all I'm going to be using are these 4 screws. Now it's time to flip the transmission back over and install this to the top of the gearbox. It's held in with 2 screws, one on each side. Both of them are 12mm. And now we can finally attach it back to the RC. We're just going to slide it into position, and then we're going to flip it upside down, and we're only going to be installing these 2 screws. Now you're going to go ahead and flip the RC back over. You're going to get this mount, and you're going to slide it underneath the transmission but above the chassis. And now you're going to get your stock screw, and you're going to install it into the back hole right here. When it comes up through the top, you're going to go ahead and mount it with one of these nuts. Then you're going to use one of these longer screws that they provide you with, and you're going to install it through the front hole, and then that also gets topped off with a nut. And there you go. One side is done. It's the same process for the other. Now that both sides are taken care of, I can attach the top of the drive shafts. Remember, once you slide it in, it's held in with one grub screw. Now I'm going to go ahead and move the drive shafts to the back, and it's time to reassemble the slipper clutch. First of all, I'm going to start off with this little bar that slides right through the hole in the drive gear. Then I'm going to get the base of the slipper clutch, slide it down, make sure it goes all the way through. There's a space for that little bar to slide into, make sure it goes down. And then you're going to get the pad. This has 4 little notches that needs to sit on, just like that, followed by the spur gear, the collapsible spring, and then finally the 4mm nut. I'm going to hold the drive shafts down, and then I'm going to tighten this nut all the way and then undo it half a turn. Once that's done with, it's time to go ahead and reattach the rear assembly. The rear assembly easily just slides right back into place. Be sure to put the top of the drive shaft back into the bottom of the drive shaft on both sides. Put it into position, And now you can reattach the rear shock tower by redoing the 4 screws that hold it in. 2 in the back and 2 in the front. After that, you need to reattach the pins that hold the A-arms into the mounts. You just slide it in and screw it in the rest of the way. After that, it's time to go ahead and reattach the bumper. Just go ahead and slide it on to the base of the chassis, just like that. And there's 3 screws. The longest one goes here, the medium one goes there, and then the shortest of the 3 go right here. After you install those screws, you're going to want to reattach the rear body mount. And remember, it's held in with 4 screws, and you're going to want to use the top 4 holes on the body mount. One thing that I should go ahead and mention is that you might want to install the body mount before the bumper, because these screws can be rather hard to get to when the bumper is already installed. After that's taken care of, you're going to get your motor and reinstall it into the gearbox. Remember, it's held in with 2 screws, one on top, one on bottom. You're going to want to get the perfect spacing in between the pinion gear and the spur gear, so you can use a piece of paper in between the 2, or you can just eye it. After you install the motor, you're going to want to go ahead and reinstall the gear cover. The gear cover is held in with 2 screws, one on top and one on bottom. With the 2 screws that hold in the gear cover, you're only going to be reusing one of the stock screws. The longer of the 2 goes up top. The bottom one, that's shorter, is going to be replaced with this longer 10mm screw that they provide with the kit. After that, you're going to want to reattach the motor to the ESC and put the tires back on, and you're done with this upgrade. Here's before, and here is after. I have to say, guys, it does look good. But it does have its benefits. Like I said, that aluminum plate does work as a motor heatsink, and it's a lot more stable than the plastic one, so the motor's not going to bend over time away from the spur gear. On top of that, I do have the 3-degree toe-in, so that is going to be a very nice feature when I'm driving around. Other than that, I have to say thank you very much, Coyote, for this awesome upgrade, but I am done. And that was Creature's level 29 upgrade. Today I'll be installing RPM's Arumium? What the heck? Really? I cut that stupid little staple. After that, be sure to go ahead and pull off the electrical tape from the bottom, and now you can finally go ahead and... Oh, the stupid tape, get off me. Urgh! Are you kidding me? Ugh. Son of a...